America. President Biden is set to meet with Attorney General Merrick Garland and local leaders today to look for ways to curb gun violence across the nation. And get this, New York City Democratic mayoral candidate Eric Adams, who just admitted his party's priorities on gun laws are misplaced, is expected to attend. This comes as Biden announced just last week that he is sending a strike force to Chicago to help curb violent crime. With 355 homicides reported in Chicago so far this year. I want to bring in former NYPD lieutenant and law enforcement professor at Pace University, Darren Porcher. And Darren, as we look at these staggering numbers, I can't believe that finally President Biden, a year after riots took over American cities after the murder of George Floyd, that we're just now seeing President Biden address this issue. Too little, too late?
I don't want to say it's too little, too late, but I mean, he's basically, the gate has escaped. The gate is closed after the horses escape. But what we're going to do from the perspective of a law enforcement view is we want to employ those resources from both the federal and local government to ensure that we can gain a precipitous drop in crime. That being said, as you mentioned earlier, Eric Adams, the mayoral candidate from New York, is looking to gain a partnership with the federal government so we can achieve the intersection of crime reduction in a place like New York. And that's where the federal government can employ resources such as ATF and other federal law enforcement agencies that can partner with the localized officers such as the NYPD. What's happening in Chicago is something that should have happened years ago because crime has always been on a meteoric rise in Chicago. And it begs the question of you need to get your head from being buried in the sand and focus on the problem, which is the disease of gun violence, and the cure is law enforcement as a result to move forward.
But Darren, you know, President Biden was on the tarmac with Lori Lightfoot, the mayor of Chicago, and who knows what they discussed. But at the end of the day, I mean, she's not doing much. I mean, she comes back when she's asked by reporters, and Mayor de Blasio in New York does the same thing. When they're asked about reporters, you've got this defund the police movement, homicides are on the rise, black and brown communities are the ones suffering, and this defund the police nonsense. She'll say, well, it was COVID. Well, we've had the perfect storm, if you're listening to Mayor de Blasio every day, which I sadly do most days because of what we've seen in this city, Darren. So they're almost gaslighting President Biden. I don't think Eric Adams will today when this meeting happens this afternoon. But so far, these other progressives are ignoring him. And I think it just shocks me that they're just so... Gaslighting is the only word I guess I can think of right here.
This can be a watershed moment for the Democratic Party in relation to crime reduction. And, you know, in defense of Mayor de Blasio and Mayor Lightfoot, they're incompetent politicians that shouldn't be in office. So hopefully we can revolutionize the strategy from the perspective of where Eric Adams stands, because he clearly understands that gun violence is an epidemic and something needs to be done to stem it. We look at what the current governor in New York, Governor Cuomo, has just recently mentioned that he's looking to embark upon an endeavor to reduce gun violence. But it goes back to what you said earlier, Cheryl. This has been going on for years on end. Now, why is Governor Cuomo coming out and saying that he wants to do something? A change needs to happen, and it needs to happen now. And this is something that's been consistent throughout the country with democratically elected politicians. They just merely haven't gotten it. And I just think that I'm hopeful that the partnership between the federal and state governments can run in tandem to reduce crime as a result.
Because if you don't get crime down in these cities, you don't get business coming back in these cities. I want to bring in Sean Duffy into all of this, in particular this meeting this afternoon. I think it's going to be about 1:15 this afternoon at the White House. Sean, your thoughts?
Yeah, listen, I think this is absolutely ridiculous. I was a former prosecutor. This is really simple. You don't need a task force. You don't need a summit. What you need to do is actually arrest criminals, prosecute criminals, and put criminals behind bars. If you defund the police, or you have a Democrat Party that messages to the community that you don't have to respect police, and I've seen the videos out of New York where, you know, water balloons are thrown at police, they're harassed as they're trying to do their job, people don't respect them, all of a sudden you have chaos on the streets. This is not a gun problem. It's people who are using guns because they're not behind bars. And so the Democrats sit back and are scratching their head like, I wonder what could be happening with violence. Well, maybe it's because you defunded the police. Or you had bond reform where you let violent criminals back out on the street. Or you had sentencing reform where you don't put bad people behind bars for a very long time. Democrats have focused more on defendants and not on victims. Let's focus on the victims and safe communities. And I think we've done it for 100 years. This will work if we enforce the law and put bad guys behind bars.
Well, gentlemen, I want you to listen to this because New York Congressman Lee Zeldin joined Maria on Sunday Morning Futures yesterday. And here's his plan to help New York deal with crime. Listen to this.
Support law enforcement more, not less. Reverse cashless bail here in New York. Keep qualified immunity. Enact a Bill of Rights for law enforcement that recognizes their inherent right to self-defense, that gives them the resources they need to ensure they aren't unfairly targeted. I was raised in a law enforcement household. I'm hearing it from all across our state, from people from all walks of life. They want to strengthen public safety in our state.
Darren, Congressman Zeldin's running for governor of New York. Your reaction?
I think Congressman Zeldin has a tremendous point or tremendous platform in connection with aligning themselves or aligning the police with politicians. But this is something that really has fruits to bear in terms of how it's going to be rolled out. I go back to what's happening for years on end with not just New York, but on a national level. The politicians have aligned themselves with the radical left, more so specific to after the death of George Floyd, the riots that plagued the entire nation, and they've not done what's necessary to align themselves with law enforcement because the symbiotic relationship with police and elected officials has not occurred. So as a result, we've experienced this meteoric rising crime. We need to take back our streets. We need to take back our city. And I wholeheartedly support Congressman Zeldin's campaign for governor because Governor Cuomo clearly has not gotten it. And I'm hopeful that Lee Zeldin can win this election and we can change the trajectory and how we focus on the reduction of crime.
I think he's got a good chance in this state. Darren Porcher, Darren, thank you very much. We appreciate it.